How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Ethan Bridge. I am host of the Social Media Marketing School podcast and the guy behind the Instagram page at The Marketing Ethan. Assuming you haven't been living under a rock, you would know that Instagram has this new feature called Reels. If you've ever heard of TikTok, I'd be surprised if you haven't. It is essentially Instagram's take on that style of content, that short 15 to 30 second video that really grabs the attention of the audience in that portrait dimension, similar to what you would find on Instagram stories. They tend to be more entertaining and just quick content that people flick through. But as I said, they have kind of taken over Instagram at the moment. Whenever Instagram releases a new feature, they go all in on pushing that content as much as they possibly can because they want to get as many people using it as possible. And this is great for us content creators because the reach for that piece of content goes through the roof. So if you haven't been utilizing Reels just yet, because you don't think they're going to be around for long or don't think they are a good medium of content for you, please stop having that mindset. People thought the same with TikTok. When it first came out, they just thought it was going to be a bunch of younger kids dancing around to songs in the charts. That has not been the case. People have been able to make incredible livelihoods off of that platform. And now that Instagram has brought them to their platform, we need to be making the most of them because of that reach that is currently being pushed towards that medium. So, that's all very well and good, but how do we actually create good Instagram Reels? I've made an episode in the past about Instagram Reels and why you should be using them and how they can benefit your business, but in this episode, I want to discuss how you can actually make good Instagram Reels and a few things to consider. I've been making Reels ever since I got the feature, so I've learned a thing or two along the way, and over time I've increasingly optimized my Reels and I'm beginning to see more and more success. So from the things that I've learned, those are what I'm going to be discussing with you in today's episode. So without any further ado, let's just dive straight into the first tip. Tip number 1, you need to know your dimensions. When it comes to Instagram Reels, there are various different things you need to understand because your Reel is going to be pushed into different places. It's not only going to be pushed in the Reels Explore feed, you also get the chance to push it to your normal feed. So there are 2 different dimensions you need to be considering there because you also have your feed cover. So let's start with your feed cover itself. So if someone was to click on your profile, that little cover image they get on your grid, what size does that need to be? It needs to be 1 by 1, 1080 by 1080. And when you are editing your cover for your reel, that is going to be the very middle of that cover. So you could make some guides so that you know what you have to work within, but that middle 1080 by 1080 is going to be what appears on your grid as your cover. So that's dimension number 1 to consider. When you post your reel to your feed, not just in the Reels tab, but you also select the option so it posts to your feed, that's when you need to understand that it is shown on the feed in the portrait format of 3 by 4, so 1080 by 1350. So any text you use or your frame of your person must be within the middle 1080 by 1350, because when people are scrolling through their feed, their normal feed, people that follow you, that is the dimensions they're going to see of your reel. So let's say you chop your head off because it's above that 1350 limit, then that's not going to look good when people are scrolling through your feed, and therefore they aren't going to consume it. Also, if you are putting text outside of those dimensions, nobody's going to see it. So you need to make sure that your framing of yourself, any text you use, any stickers, any pop-ups you use are within those 1080 by 1350 dimensions if you are posting it to your feed. Now the actual reel itself, if somebody is scrolling through the Reels feed, your video is going to appear in the 1080 by 1920 format, the same as Instagram stories. So when you are recording your reel on your camera, that is the format it's going to stay in on the Reels feed. So you don't have to really worry about that one because that one's the standard. That's going to be the one where if you're recording on your phone, it will do it automatically. But you need to be mindful of the other 2 dimensions I have just told you. Because if you aren't following those, you're not optimizing your post for all of the different places that people are going to see it. So just be considerate when you are recording your reel, when you're actually adding your text in on the app itself, when you're actually doing the editing, it does have little guides. It will have those limits. So if you are moving your text around, it will come up with that little blue line. It will just tell you where the guide is, where it's going to cut it off on your feed. So that 3x4 dimension, the 1080 by 1350, it does let you know when you are crossing that. So you don't have to worry about guessing because the app itself does tell you where not to go over so you stay within those limits. But just be mindful of the fact that if you go beyond that guide, then when you do post it to your feed, nobody is going to see anything outside of those. So know your dimensions because you want to make sure your reel is optimized for all of the different places people are going to see it. So that was tip number 1. Tip number 2 is that reels are short. They are between 0 and 30 seconds. So you need to be grabbing the attention. You've got to get straight to the point. Your hook, the main point about your reel, bring it to the front. Those first 3 seconds are vital. Reels are entertaining. So you need to make sure that you are grabbing that attention. If you aren't grabbing that attention, then nobody's going to consume the rest of your reel. So you need to bring that hook. Let's say your post is about 3 tools for Instagram growth. You don't want to tell them that it's about that 5 or 6 seconds in. Take that out. Put it right at the beginning. The first thing you're going to say to the camera, here are 3 tips about Instagram growth. Here are 3 tools for Instagram growth. That's it. As soon as someone sees, they know what your reel is about, and then they can decide whether they want to continue watching. The likely fact is, people want to increase their Instagram growth. So if you are telling them that within the first 3 seconds, they are instantly hooked because they know that the rest of your post is going to be about that. So every single thing they are going to consume within the next 15 to 30 seconds is valuable to them. But they only stuck around because that is what you told them your post was going to be about within the first 3 seconds. If you hadn't got straight to the point and told them that, they probably would have just scrolled on. So your hook at the very, very beginning is key. It's like the same as anything. If you were creating a carousel post, your cover slide is the main thing you want to be focusing on. With a carousel, you do get a second chance of that. If people don't scroll forwards, they are shown your second slide. So your second slide is also very, very important. But that cover slide needs to grab the attention. Your headline needs to be on point. That is similar to your reel. The first 3 seconds of what you say need to grab that attention. That is like your headline on your carousel. It's like that cover slide that grabs the attention on the feed. So make sure your hook is at the very beginning. You are getting straight to the point so that people know why they need to stick around. If you aren't telling them, they aren't going to. Tip number 3, please, please, please include captions. 80% of people on social media consume video without sound. So if your reel doesn't include captions, then that rules out anybody that isn't consuming it with the sound turned on. You need to be making sure that your piece of video content, this applies for any video content, not just reels. You need to make sure that the content you produce applies to everybody consuming it, whether they have the sound turned on or off. If they have the sound turned on, great. They can listen to what you're saying. They could also read the caption. But if they have the sound turned off and you don't have captions, everything you say is useless because they don't know what you're saying unless they are great at lip reading. But if you have captions, they can understand what your post is about without the sound being turned on. And I've had a ton of people send me DMs saying, thank God you have captions on your videos and your reels because I often listen to your content on my commute or in public where I don't want to have the sound turned on, so I can still benefit from it. So it just goes to show how important having captions is to make sure that it is consumable by everybody. So make sure you have captions. But as I said, you've got to remember that these captions need to be within those dimensions that I mentioned in point number 1. Use the guides that Instagram gives you. If you're editing your video on a third-party app, such as Premiere Pro or iMovie, make sure it's within the 1080 by 1350 dimensions, because again, that is what your reel appears as on your feed when people are scrolling through. So you need to make sure your captions within that are there so that people just watching your reel within your feed, if they have their sound turned off, which most of the time they do, they can still consume it. Make sure your video content applies to as many people as possible. For me, I just assume that people are going to listen to video content with the sound turned off. And when you assume things like that, it makes you put in the effort to put the captions in. Yes, it takes longer because you got to type out what you've said or use the speech to text tool to make sure you are getting word for word right what you have said within your video, but it's worth it. Because if it does have the potential to go viral or get lots of views, you name it, you are giving yourself that best opportunity because it applies to more people. The more people your content applies to, the more likely it is to go viral. So make sure you include captions because that does just that. Number 4. Now, reels are supposed to be more entertaining. They aren't something where you're really formal and you just provide what you would within your feed content, like a lesson or things like that. You need to make it entertaining somewhat. If you were to just scroll through the Reels Explore page, you will see that the content that does really well are the ones that keep you gripped. They are more entertaining. They aren't just people being boring. So you need to make sure that you are making these reels entertaining. Think about ways you can jazz them up a bit, have some cool little effects or have some enthusiasm within your voice. You don't want to just be monotone and talking like this because that will not entertain people, and you need to be entertaining. You need to adapt the style of your content to fit the medium you are posting. And Reels is an entertaining medium. You can't expect to post a boring reel and it succeed. The content I've found works best are the quick little hacks that people might need to learn, or a spot of motivation. People love a quick 15-30 second burst of motivation, and Reels are the perfect place to do just that. You've got to remember, you've got to get your point across within a very short period of time. So for example, if you've got something where you need to go into more detail, don't make that a reel. Make it an IGTV, make it a normal feed video. If you are posting a reel, it needs to be quick, it needs to be straight to the point, and it needs to be entertaining. Those are the trifecta of things that make sure that your reel has the best opportunity possible. So that's just tip number 4. Make sure that your content is entertaining. Reels is an entertaining platform. Treat it as if you would be treating TikTok. TikTok is an entertaining platform. You don't go on there to consistently learn a feed of content about education and things like that. It's a real mixture. You've got educational, you've got motivational, you've got funny, you've got sad sometimes. I know that's just something that's come to my head, but you get my point. It's got to be something that keeps you entertained. The more it entertains you, the more likely that you are going to keep those people watching for the whole video, and that is your goal when it comes to reels. That is how the algorithm gauges whether your reel is performing well. The watch time. You want people watching the whole way through. Some people may even watch 3 or 4 times because it just continues to loop. The more views you get, the more likely you are to go viral with a reel. And because reels are so new and Instagram are pushing them as much as possible, the reach is phenomenal. So if you get a good watch time, it is likely that you are going to reach a lot of people outside of your normal follower base because you are doing just that. Make sure your videos are entertaining. It will increase your watch time, which in turn increases the likelihood of that reel reaching more people. Now, the final thing I want to mention, and it's not really a tip, it's just making sure that you guys are riding the Reels wave. At the moment, as I said, Reels are very new to Instagram. When Instagram releases a new feature, they are pushing it as much as they possibly can, more so than other pieces of content that people are posting, because they want to get more people using it. They want to increase their market share for that content medium. At the moment, TikTok are completely dominating that short form video in that style, that entertainment factor, you name it. TikTok's dominating it. Instagram is trying to take some of those TikTok users. So they want all of the big creators on Instagram to be making reels. So how do they do that? They push reels more so than other pieces of content. The reach is ridiculous. You need to be riding the wave right now if you are a content creator. If you are seeing that your engagement is down at the moment, one of the reasons for that is probably reels. And if you're not creating them, that is how you can substitute that recent drop, because you will see ridiculous reach from Reels if you are posting the right content there. So ride the wave now whilst you can, because as soon as people begin to work out the hacks behind Reels and ways you can optimize them to make them better, all of those things along those lines, Reels are going to become increasingly more difficult to succeed on. So at the moment, nobody really knows what they're doing. Nobody really knows how to hack the algorithm when it comes to Reels. But if you are getting on now, you are working out what works for you, what works in your niche, and therefore you just keep rinsing and repeating this content that works well, you are going to succeed on Reels. And even when the engagement drops for that area of the platform because Instagram don't need to push it as much, you are still going to continue to succeed. But those who didn't ride the wave when the barrier to entry was low are going to find it much more difficult to build an audience on Reels. So get on there whilst it's easy. Don't make it difficult for yourself 4 or 5 months down the line when Reels become much more difficult to succeed on because there are so many more people creating Reels. Get on it now whilst it's easy. Work out how to make great Reels, what works for you, what works within your niche. Because if you do that now, you're saving yourself a lot of hassle further down the line. And that does wrap up my 5 ways for you guys to make better Instagram Reels. So just quickly recap, make sure you know your dimensions. Make sure you are putting your hook at the very start to grab your attention immediately. Make sure you're including captions. Make sure your videos are entertaining. And finally, ride that wave whilst it's easy. But that does wrap up today's video. As you can see here, I'm a very new creator here on YouTube, so every little helps when it comes to smashing the like button, hitting the subscribe button, and turning on post notifications. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm, so would appreciate if you could do all of those things. But I did just want to mention that this is actually a part of my podcast series, Social Media Marketing School. It's on pretty much any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. Just search Social Media Marketing School. I will pop up and you can listen there. But the audio version of the podcast is the place to be because I released this content a couple of days earlier on the audio version, and then a couple of days later, the video version is released here on YouTube. So if you prefer the audio a little bit earlier, make sure you're subscribing over there. If you prefer the video content, stick here on YouTube. But if you've got any questions with regards to anything I've mentioned on today's video, just reach out to me on Instagram at @themarketingethan, send me a DM and I'll get back to you no matter what. But if you have made it to this point in the video, I just want to finish off by saying thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.